WWDC is right around the corner, and I have a list of things I would like to see announced at the event. This video is sponsored by Sanebox. Let's get into it. Let's start with my favorite platform, iPadOS. So one feature that I've been wanting for a really long time is a clipboard manager. And there's a couple of different ways that I could see Apple going about doing this. First, I could see them just implementing a system-wide clipboard manager, let it hook into Spotlight. Anything you copy to your clipboard, it automatically gets added to a list. You can pull that from Spotlight, boom. And then maybe there's like an API for apps to be like, hey, don't add this automatically to the clipboard. Maybe if you copy something that looks like a bank routing number or, a password or something like that out of the Passwords app, or if you use something like 1Password, maybe it could prevent that from happening. The other way I could see this happening is Apple just introducing an API and basically letting third-party developers do this. Honestly, either one I would be really happy for. The benefit of having third-party developers do that is we would see different interpretations of how a clipboard manager could work system-wide. So there's a couple of different ways that it could go about. I just really hope to see it because the lack of a clipboard manager on iPadOS and iOS is really frustrating at times. The next is Spotlight extensions. This is an idea I got from the app Raycast over on the Mac. Basically, what I think Spotlight extensions could do is they could allow third-party apps to hook into Spotlight. So on something like Raycast or Alfred, I'm gonna use Things, for example, the task manager Things. There's an extension in Raycast for Things. So I can use this extension to create a task for the Things app right from Raycast. I never actually have to open the Things app. And it's just super handy so that I can create this from anywhere in the OS. I think this would be a really nice bridge between the system and third-party apps and making things open up just a little bit, but still letting Apple keep, their security focus and their privacy focus features stay front and center. The next is something, I don't know why Apple hasn't done this yet, but Passwords needs to become its own app. It being buried in settings is just, it doesn't work for anyone really. I would love to see Keychain, the password management app on the Mac, come to the iPad. And there's some stuff that Keychain can do on the Mac that the stuff in the password settings pane can't do, specifically things like secure notes. I use that section for storing like software keys and stuff like that. I keep all that stuff there so it's all in one place. The Mail app should really get a share sheet. I do not know why the Mail app does not have a share sheet. Because what's weird is you could drag and drop content out of the Mail app. So I can drag a piece of mail into my task manager Things and it'll create a task for it. But if I have that piece of mail open in the Mail app, I cannot just send it to Things via the share sheet. Really needs share sheet support. On the iPad, multi-stream audio support. This is what podcasters need in order to be able to do true podcasting from the iPad. Back when I had my podcast, I got around this by using multiple devices and just, it was very clunky. It's not something that I would want to do full-time again. The iPad really needs multi-stream audio. And what that means is basically the ability to play back multiple audio streams or record multiple audio streams. So typically the way a podcast works is you have like a Skype call, FaceTime call, Zoom call, whatever, and there are a bunch of people on there and everyone is recording their own local track. So on the iPad, I have the ability to do either the call or record my track, but not both. So we really need the ability to be like, hey, I'm gonna have this phone call, but also record my local audio track. In shortcuts, I would love to see the ability to add keyboard shortcuts for triggering shortcuts. I said shortcuts a lot in that sentence, but I think you all know what I mean. So be able to like assign Command Control C to my shortcut Capture Cut. So anywhere in the system I can hit that and it'll run Capture Cut. The other thing I would love to see, and I don't think this one will happen, this one's pretty far-fetched, scripting actions. So bring the Apple script actions that are on the Mac to the iPad. Now that would require bringing Apple script to the iPad, which is a whole nother can of worms. So I don't really think it's gonna happen, but this is my video, so I'm gonna throw it in there. Next is something that really does need to happen, and that's font book. The way we currently have to install fonts, well, there's actually two ways. The preferred way is downloading a third-party app, adding the font to it, and then installing a profile on your iPad. It's very cumbersome. It's no good. Apple introduced a few years ago a way for apps to basically like package fonts in them and then add them to the system. As far as I know, only 2 apps support that. One of them is Adobe, and then another one I'm not entirely sure is still being maintained. I actually couldn't find it on the App Store, but I know there were 2 at one point that existed, which is not very many. So honestly, Apple, just bring FontBook to the iPad. Let us just drag and drop fonts into it, install them into the system, and call it a day. This video is sponsored by Sanebox. Sanebox sits in between your email server and your inbox. As mail comes in, it gets filtered into specific folders you can set up. I use folders for messages that aren't important, newsletters, and receipts. One of my favorite features of Sanebox is Sane Black Hole. I can drag any email to this folder. If that sender ever sends me another email, it automatically gets marked as read and added here. I don't have to mess with any filtering rules. It happens automatically. I get a ton of emails from, honestly, con artists, newsletters I didn't sign up for, and just spam. This is a great way to just get rid of those emails altogether. Sanebox's new feature, Deep Clean, helps you keep the size of your email archive down. Most of us have a fixed amount of space for email when it comes to whoever our email provider is. If you go over that, you'll either stop receiving email or you'll have to pay for extra space. Deep Clean goes in and scans your archive, showing you a list of the largest messages and senders. You can then select the ones you want to delete, and then you can delete all of them with the push of a button. Deep Clean is a completely free feature, a part of Sanebox. Sanebox is one of my favorite services out there. I will put a link in the description below to where you can go check out Sanebox. You can also sign up for a free 14-day trial of Sanebox. There's no credit card required, so it's a true free trial. Use the link in the description below to get a $25 free credit if you decide to sign up. My thanks to Sanebox for sponsoring this video. Okay, so there's 2 massive items that I'm really gonna be looking for into this next version of iPadOS. The first is Stage Manager fixes. I really want the multitasking story to be solved on the iPad. This has been something that has been going on since iOS 9. That's a very long time. I think that's 8 years off the top of my head. I just want multitasking to be solved on the iPad. So I talked in a previous video how I've just disabled Stage Manager because I just was so frustrated using it. I've since re-enabled it because I realized I didn't want to be one of those grumpy tech commentators that only gives something one try and then never turns it on again or never uses it again. Though to be fair, this is Stage Manager's like 10th try with me, so not exactly the same boat. But I didn't want to be that person, so I've re-enabled it. But there are some, I don't want to say basic, but there are some top level fixes that I think could really help this. First, lose the 4 window limit. I think that's artificial. Everything that I've kind of like prodded and maybe there's a technical reason for it, but honestly on the M2 iPad Pros and M1 iPad Pros and stuff like that, I really can't see why only being able to have 4 windows, not apps, windows, because if I have Mail open and 3 other apps and I create a new Compose window, it'll kick one of those other apps out of that stage. When launching an app, have it open in the current stage, not create a new space. This could even be a setting. I would totally be okay with that. I would absolutely make a video called How to Fix Stage Manager and it'd be just enabling this setting, but I would be okay if this is just a setting. It's maddening to me that every time I open an app, it opens in a new stage. It creates a lot of needing to drag and drop stuff around, and it's just moving things around. And because of that, I feel like I'm spending more time managing Windows than using my device. And then I just get frustrated and grab my Mac. This next one might be a bit harder, but I still can't figure out a technical reason for it existing. But the snap to grid and like the specific sizes of resizing a window have that go away. Make it fluid like the Mac. And when I talked about Stage Manager in my iPadOS 16 walkthrough, I showed that there was kind of like some exceptions to a few of these, and it doesn't really make sense to me why this exists, especially when you look at the fact that there are Catalyst apps on the Mac, so they're iPad apps, and they're freely resizable. So I feel like it's technically possible. And I will say, everything on this list is technically possible. I didn't put anything far-fetched out there. I think I kept it all within the realm of sanity. Next would be keyboard shortcuts for moving apps around stages, whether it's, kicking apps out of stages, moving them to another stage, moving things into a specific position, like shifting an app to the left side or the right side or whatever. There are some shortcuts like that, like Globe F will make a window full screen. Command M will minimize. So there are some of those shortcuts right now, but there should be a lot more. And then finally, and this one is probably like the farthest stretch one. If this was the one that didn't quite make it, but everything else did, I would still be happy, but I would love to see this. Shortcuts actions for managing multitasking like there's on the Mac. So on the Mac, there are find, resize, and move window actions. This allows you to kind of basically build spaces and multitasking arrangements to the way you want on the Mac. It'd be really cool to see that on the iPad. But the absolute biggest thing that I'm looking for in iPadOS 17, that's Final Cut on the iPad. I would love to see Logic and Xcode also, but this is my video, and out of those three, Final Cut would be the one that I want to see the most. I know everyone's opinion is going to differ there. But the lack of Final Cut on the iPad is what's preventing me from going back to the iPad full-time as my main computer. I tried DaVinci Resolve, and it's very, very complex and so much more than what I need. And I'm incredibly fast when it comes to editing Final Cut. That's partially due to the performance of Final Cut and also partially due to the fact that I've been using it for a couple of years now. I know all the shortcuts. I have a bunch of presets and templates built in there. So I'm really fast at it. And Resolve is very different from other nonlinear editors. For those that don't know, nonlinear editors are what are now traditional video editors. They're also known as non-destructive editors. So you can edit things in any way. You can undo stuff. But I will say, if it were to come out that Final Cut is absolutely never ever coming to the iPad, I would definitely throw a lot of weight into learning DaVinci because it is very good on the iPad. It's just a lot more than what I need, and I have so much Final Cut knowledge now that I just don't want to give that up for the sake of changing to something that's definitely not better for my needs. So I have a couple of wish list items for iOS as well. A lot of the stuff that I mentioned for iPadOS could also be brought over, like font book, side loading, mail, passwords, etc. But the biggest thing that I want to see on the iPhone is split view. Basically be able to put an app at the top of the iPhone screen and the bottom of an iPhone screen. This could be handy for dragging and dropping content between the apps, referencing something while taking notes. I really do think like this is absolutely possible. And I know somebody's going to be like, well, you wouldn't be able to use the keyboard and two apps at the same time. Dictation, my friend. Have it default to dictation when using split view on the iPhone. And then the other thing I want to see, and this actually applies to iPadOS as well, and look at me closely. Let's make eye contact here. Don't hide the shuffle and repeat buttons in Apple Music. It is so frustrating when I play an album and then all of a sudden I'm like 3 or 4 songs into it and I'm like, this is definitely not the right order, and shuffle has been on because I forgot I turned it on when I was listening to a playlist earlier. Please don't hide the shuffle and repeat buttons. They're very small. There's no need for them to be hidden, hide, hid, whatever. You know what I mean. So the big rumor for WWDC is that Apple will be announcing their VR and AR headset at this event, which I am really excited about. I have been getting super into VR stuff lately. I recently got the PSVR 2. Maybe I should make a video about it. It's been so much fun. It's made me a VR believer. Absolutely love it. So I hope there's a big focus on games, but the other thing that I really want to see is the ability to plug it into an iPad or a Mac and be able to have a virtual desk environment. A lot of people are probably like, why would you want that? Think about it this way. So if I'm working from a 14-inch MacBook Pro, which is fine for like writing, answering emails, really good, but it's really cramped for editing video. So I could put on the headset and I could extend the display because now you're in VR. Physical stuff does not matter anymore. I can make that display as big as I want, or I could add multiple displays if you wanted to do something like that. And then you could do something like what the Quest Pro 2, Meta Quest Pro 2, I forget exactly what the name is, but basically I've tried this a few weeks ago. I tried one of these and it let you overlay a virtual keyboard on top of your physical keyboard. So that way when you're in VR, you're still typing on your hardware keyboard. So for somebody like me that likes keyboards, I could still have my clicky or tactical feeling keyboards while, being in VR, which would be really nice. Because one thing I really don't want to do is like be in VR and like typing in the air with my fingers. That sounds miserable for a long period of time. If it was for something short, like entering my name into a game or something like that, that wouldn't be that big of a deal. Overall, I'm just ecstatic for the VR headset. I'm gonna lightning round these next few because I don't have a lot for them. For macOS, shortcuts automation tab. In shortcuts, there is no automation tab. I don't know why on the Mac. It's there on the iPhone, it's there on the iPad. The Mac makes even more sense, especially desktop Macs, because they're always on or can be always on. The next, fix notification center and widgets. No idea why they're still combined. Doesn't make sense to me. And then lastly, fix the login prompt. I know there are background items. I installed those items. I don't need to be told there are background items every single time I turn on my computer. Really don't need that. TVOS. I would love the ability to make playlists of TV episodes. So I have these shows that I call turn off my brain shows. They're like The Simpsons, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, The Office, Parks and Recreation, Community. They're shows that are fun shows that don't require me to think. Usually I like watching these after I've just been working for a long period of time. But I would love to be able to make a playlist out of those shows, add all of them to the playlist, and then just hit a shuffle button and let TVOS just randomly pick an episode and then show me what's next. watchOS is getting a very specific request, and this is probably the most far-fetched thing in this video. I want the Files app on the watch. Now hear me out. It's not because I want to sit there and work on text documents on my watch. It's because I have a bunch of shortcuts that hook into the Files app. I've been playing with Obsidian lately as like my application to write scripts. Because there's no Files app on the watch, I can't run any of these on the watch. So either bring the Files app to the watch or have like those shortcuts kick over to the iPhone for the background process or something, but just give me the ability to run shortcuts on the watch that hook into the Files app. That's all I want. So those are my wish list items. I'm curious to hear from you all. What is on your wish list for WWDC? My thanks to Sanebox for sponsoring this video. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for watching and have a great day.